Urban sprawl. Urban sprawl is a type of development that is characterized by low-density settlement, residential and non-residential, automobile dependency, and centers and parks that waste land needlessly. Suburbia, miles upon miles of similar houses separated by green spaces, where most people dream of finding their future homes. Space, green grass, trees, ponds, and parks, all the perks of living in the city without the crowds and the towering buildings. But at what cost? Cars become essential to get around the area as well as commute to the city. The spaces needed for the expansion is taking agriculturally viable land, which is necessary more than ever to ensure we feed our growing population. The area that is paved and developed increases runoff to surrounding areas, affecting habitats. This also increases the flood occurrence of the area. This can cause extensive damage in basements and yards. The large area used in developing urban sprawl destroys organisms, habitats, and ecosystems. There is an increase in energy consumption for the same reason that pollution from cars increases in these areas as well. Every family is individualized. Each has their own water supply, furnace, car, electricity, and much more. The side effects of suburbia are vast. And for what gain? Transportation. Because of the space within the sprawl, people inevitably need automobiles to get from point A to point B. Menial trips to the grocery store, school, work, the bank, or even the library are all too far to walk for most people, and thus driving becomes a necessity. The exhaust from the vehicles release chemicals such as nitric oxide and carbon dioxide into the environment. The nitric oxide, once in the atmosphere, can mix with UV radiation to make ground-level ozone, which is toxic, unlike atmospheric ozone, which we require to keep harmful radiation at bay. This ground-level ozone, which contributes to smog in cities, is the dense cloud that appears to be similar to fog. It accumulates in cities due to a dense pollution concentration and a temperature change from hot to cold air that traps the air within a pocket above where the pollution occurred. Smog is often interpreted as fog, but it can have detrimental effects on health, create visibility issues, and cause air quality to decrease where fog is a natural occurrence. The nitric oxide can also mix with water vapor, which forms nitric acid. This is a main factor in acid rain, which is a harsh pollutant and can have hazardous effects on our environment and health. Statistics in Canada show that in 2008, transportation accounted for 54% of the nitric oxide emissions that cause acid rain. Acid rain can not only cause toxic levels for humans in their environment, it deteriorates soft rock such as limestone that a lot of statues are made of. It also leaches into our soils and lakes. It causes a loss of biodiversity and habitats because toxicity levels change and the organisms are not able to adapt and therefore die. Carbon dioxide is also given off by the vehicles, which is a well-known greenhouse gas and a major contributor to climate change. Increased automobile usage increases pollution that can have terrible effects on humans, animals, and plants. Land use. Suburbia is a result of people's desire to have a claim on their own space. A yard, a garage, room to breathe and think. Space. Space and land that would otherwise be used for agriculture. Our global population is expected to reach 9 billion people by the year 2050. This would mean raising our world food production by 70%. With our population increasing exponentially, it is imperative that we are able to use the land we have to produce as much food as we possibly can. Urban sprawl results in the inefficient use of land to create neighborhoods, large houses, green spaces, and ponds. How do we expect to feed the world if we are using our viable land in unproductive ways? Runoff and floods. Urban sprawl requires major paved areas. Roadways, sidewalks, housing, shops, and industrial areas are just a few examples that are required to make the outskirts of the cities livable. This creates flat, even ground with cement that is unable to absorb precipitation on top of viable soil, which means that we are increasing the runoff to surrounding areas from the development. This changes habitats and could have damaging effects on organisms. This also alters flooding occurrences. A cycle occurs. The development increases runoff, which alters the environment surrounding it, which inevitably increases flood potential and occurrence. Flooding is expensive and a hassle for those that it affects. The pavement stops the water from being absorbed to the land's full potential, so it runs into basements and yards, causing costly damage. Flooding and runoff can affect both humans and species in the ecosystem around the development. Energy consumption. Energy consumption increases exponentially in suburban areas. Every household has a car, a furnace, water, electricity, and much more. Each house and family are independent of each other completely, and this increases the energy when comparing it to households and apartments in city spaces. Although we as a society are trying to get a handle on the energy consumption at a global scale, sprawl hinders this attempt. Loss of biodiversity. Because of the large amount of space that sprawl requires, many plants and animals are killed or misplaced to make room for the vast amounts of people moving in. As a result, biodiversity is lost. Animal habitats are disrupted and in many cases completely destroyed to make room for the developments and all of the industry that comes along with the urban sprawl. How can we help to make urban sprawl less inefficient and damaging? In my opinion, we can do something to try to help in regards to each of the topics we have talked about. Public transit improvements can make vehicles less necessary. This would reduce pollution and make commuting much easier and possibly faster. Individually, we can try to carpool to and from similar places. Utilizing runoff that is increased because of the development could help to offset this side effect. Catchments could store water and allow for use in households or industry. Using solar power for water and electricity could help lower the amount of energy being consumed. Other alternatives could also be considered, such as hydropower, wind power, and any other clean energy sources. Creating densely populated urban centers would be the counter to urban sprawl. It would save land and habitats. This would mean building more apartment buildings in replacement of individual houses. Less inefficient use of space within the city is key as well. Make sure to have only green spaces that benefit the city or the people. Flood control, sequesters of certain elements, actual environmental interaction with the individuals would all help to make urban sprawl more efficient. Ideally, future city plans would only include growth as close to the heart of the city as logically possible, and the smart use of space. Current sprawl areas would be turned into a more dense area with different building plans that require major changes and even more development within the existing areas. Urban sprawl is not the future we want for our planet. It is deadly for not only ourselves as humans, but for the plants and animals that we coexist with. We need to think of the consequences that come along with our actions. It is our planet, it is our responsibility, and it is our actions that can change the future.
Change the world. I'm gonna take it one day at a time. I made my resolution. I've opened up my eyes.